Western corporate media finally exposes the fascism in Ukraine after shamelessly pretending that Ukraine has been fighting for democracy for the last few years. A recent Political article exposes the systemic corruption within the state of Ukraine and how the Ukrainian government goes after whistleblowers who expose the corruption within the government. A prominent anti-corruption official was just thrown in prison on nonsense embezzlement charges, and just another example of the Ukrainian regime retaliating against their critics or anyone who investigates their corruption. This is following Zelensky abolishing independent corruption watchdog organizations and then bringing them under control of the Ukrainian government. You also have Zelensky, who banned opposition political parties, opposition media, and banned the right for workers to engage in collective bargaining. Now do you guys see why ethnic Russians in the Donbass and Luhansk don't want to be part of this fascist Ukrainian regime? This shouldn't be surprising, because before 2022, the Western media used to report on how Ukraine is one of the most corrupt countries in the world. Then the West finally got the proxy war they wanted, and then all of a sudden Ukraine became a symbol of democracy and freedom. Zelensky plans to keep this conflict going forever so he doesn't have to hold elections. And the Ukrainian regime is targeting anyone who advocates for peace with Russia with lawfare. The Zelensky regime is forcing an entire generation of Ukrainians to fight and die on behalf of NATO, which is why there is a mass exodus of Ukrainian young men from the country. Zelensky will go down in history as a tyrant who sold out the Ukrainian people to the genocidal United States and NATO regime.
What's poppin'? My friends, my family, we're back once again. Welcome to Nick at Prime Time. I hope you guys are having fun and enjoying yourself during your Zionist controlled popularity contest that they call elections that everyone is super excited for. The fact that the progressive left got behind the fascism that we saw in Ukraine when they banned opposition parties, banned opposition media, banned the right to collective bargain. These are the people who was attacking, shelling, and killing ethnic Russians in the Donbass and Luhansk. These are the people who banned the Russian language. Meanwhile, Ro Khanna thought he can go on my show and defend why he support the Ukrainian regime. He said, I believe in the history and the culture of resistance. That's why I support neo-Nazi CIA-funded ops for the empire, which is why you will never see me get excited for these Zionist popularity contests now. Like, we need to form a movement where we completely suppress the interests of the capitalist class. You cannot replace class warfare with bourgeoisie electoral politics. So, don't get me wrong, I'm going to enjoy the meltdown. The meltdown, I always do that. Like, when Donald Trump won, I laughed at Democrats. When Democrats won in 2020, I laughed at MAGA. That's the same thing I'm going to do. I'm going to laugh at all the New York Zionists, all the billionaires who freaking out over Zoran Mamdani. But I'm telling you guys right now, he is not going to decrease the cost of goods. His rent plan doesn't even solve the New York affordability crisis when it comes to renting. It only impacts a small amount of renters. He's already having meetings with landlords saying he's not going to do anything to hurt their business model or their profits. It doesn't matter who wins. Like, I don't blame you for enjoying the sideshow. And I'm going to enjoy the meltdown. But we are seeing the working class being squeezed. How many reports like this have I done? And we have our friend Carl Zah who will be joining us here very soon. Compare this to the Chinese model, which is uplifting the working class. We have billionaires are hitting record amount of money. You have Elon Musk on track to being a trillionaire. The top 10 billionaires, just 10 billionaires made $698 billion last year. The top 1% made around $2 trillion in wealth last year. as they convince people to fight over the culture war. They're robbing us as people are still invested in a pro-NATO genocidal Democratic Party. Like, it's wild to me to see people still invested in this. I didn't expect these elections to be this big, but they are. I wish I lacked the integrity to take advantage of that. I wish I could have easily just rode the Zoran Mamdani train to prominence, but I'm not here to lie to you guys. I'm here to bullshit you. Zoran Mamdani is not going to flip these numbers. That's not how you do it. This is the result of anti-communism that's destroyed the American working class. Only 12% homeowners. Absolute destruction in the economy. Hey, but don't worry, guys. We got Barack Obama's on board. Obama calls Mamdani to praise his campaign and offers to be his sounding board. Oh, Jesus Christ. And I see BS like, look, we got Obama on board. No, this is the ruling class pulling him and convincing and influencing Mamdani to sell out to their positions. So as the left, the progressive left, turn into cheerleaders, you had the ruling class that was putting in work and putting their influence on Mamdani. And this is what Ali said. Barack Obama is a blood-soaked war criminal, a psychopathic servant of billionaires who remained silent throughout 2 years of Zionist Holocaust in Gaza. Nothing good can come from him. And I'm going to bring you in, Carl, after I'm going to show this clip here. This is what, and as we have the billionaire class, as we have the Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos class robbing the working class, you have the Democrats, you have people like Zoran Mamdani, who he said his job is to save the Democratic Party, and that's exactly what they're going to do. This is the man who oversaw one of the largest transfer of wealth from the working class in human history, the complete destruction of the black working class. Now he's on board with Zoran Mamdani trying to get Democrats elected, and people are falling for this again.
I worry about the growing concentration of economic power in this country. With just a handful of mega billionaires and companies controlling what we see and what we hear. And I worry about how much that economic power distorts the political process. I worry about how readily not just business leaders, but others with influence in law firms and universities have been willing to bend the knee to this president's autocratic impulses to avoid retribution or protect profits or simply to avoid controversy. And I worry sometimes how we've come to accept this as normal.
This is the guy who is on Zoran's team. You guys realize that Barack Obama had a kill list, and he bragged about how great he is at killing people, extrajudicial killings, where he had very loosely defined targets. He, like, the same legal justification that Trump is using now to justify bombing fishermen in Venezuela. It's the same. He using the Obama precedent when Obama murdered 90% civilian death strike casualty rate. The same Obama that said Trump is tied to his Wall Street goons. This man bailed out the banks. He had a cabinet that was selected by Wall Street. He selected Eric Holder as a mole, so he refused to prosecute Wall Street bankers. And now these people are being rehabilitated. So hope you guys have fun during your Zionist popularity contest. Because congratulations, you have liberal Zionism in New York City now. You guys know that I'm gonna wrap up on this thought because I have my guests waiting. Zoran Mamdani has hurt the Palestinian movement because he made legitimate criticisms of the Zionist-controlled ruling class now off the table. The same way he condemned, globalized the Intifada, condemned the resistance, that's him legitimizing Zionist attacks against Palestinian organizations and slogans. So Mamdani, he used to criticize the NYPD for organizing with Israel. And now he recently apologized for this. He's running, because you guys see the New York Times attacking him for this. Now he has an Epstein-associated Zionist witch who's going to be in control of the NYPD. So congrats on your liberal Zionism that you guys have in New York now. Well, I want to bring my guests in. Let's bring Carl Zah in because we want to discuss China. Because I've been doing coverage on this for a while. How Donald Trump got into the trade war with China and got immediately humbled. Let's bring in our guest, our friend Carl Zah, amazing geopolitical analyst and expert, historian, author, host of the Silk and Still podcast. Thank you for joining us on RBN once again, Carl Zah.
Hi, thanks, Nick. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. We had to get your opinions on this because I've done a live stream recently where I explained how MAGA got completely humbled by China. And I predicted this when Donald Trump won his election last year. I said, congratulations. The easy part is over. Defeating Kamala Harris, defeating broken brain Joe Biden. That was the easy part. Now you got to deal with the rise of China. That's the hard part. The election is easy. And I showed old tweets of these MAGA accounts that had these horrifically aged takes where they were saying stuff like China only have few options right now. Accept Donald Trump's terms and completely surrender, devalue the one. Now Donald Trump has, and he was humbled by China. And I will play this clip to get your thoughts on his attempted trade policy because Trump has changed his tune a lot. I want to get your response to this clip, Carl. When he's asked about China, he says something that we've been advocating for a long time: cooperation with China.
How big of a threat is China?
It's like everybody else. We're a threat to them, too. Many of the things that you say, we do to them. Look, this is a very competitive world, especially when it comes to China and the U.S., and we're always watching them, and they're always watching us. In the meantime, I think we get along very well, and I think I think we can be bigger, better, and stronger by working with them as opposed to just knocking them out.
How big of a threat is China?
Now, you guys see the question she asked in the beginning, but isn't this what I've been advocating for? Isn't it better for us to work with China? Carl, I want to get your thoughts on the results of the trade war, your reaction to Donald Trump publicly changed his tune, going from trying to bring China to heel. Now he's saying we got to work together with them. What's your thoughts on recent developments?
Well, Nick, have always been a fan of taco, and Taco Thursday is very good. Trump just basically rolled back all the so-called liberation tariffs back to the days of March. So all the whole 7 month was for nothing. All that 7 month that he caused the disturbance in the market. Sorry, folks, that's just for show. Because it takes him 7 months to realize China hold all the cards. In fact, China make all the cards. And this is particularly in the case of rare earth, where China still dominates 90% of the rare earth processing. So to the point where when they dug out rare earth from mountain pass mine in California, they had to ship it to China for processing. It was done until April this year when finally the tariff went up so much they stopped sending rare earth from California to China for processing. But the problem is China has been preparing for this moment for 8 years, for 7-8 years, ever since Trump's first term, when Trump first started slapping tariff on China. And whereas Trump, he thought as long as he makes that tariff announcement, it will be a magical bullet. Everybody will bend the knee. That's not what happened. And they had no preparation for what's to come after. And this is this is a problem with the Washington elite circles. They have been imbibing their own propaganda for so long, they start to believe it. I mean, it's one thing to propagandize the American public about the relative strength of United States versus China. But when you believe in your own, when you start drinking your own Kool-Aid, that presents a problem. And I think
we see it all the time.
Exactly. And in the end, so what Trump agreed to was now that Trump agreed to roll back the September 29th new restriction on semiconductor exports to on Chinese semiconductors. So the September 29th so-called BIS 50% rule, which expanded the blacklist on Chinese semiconductor company from original 1,400 to 20,000. That major escalation is what triggered the latest round in the trade war. When China on October 9th, they slap on more stringent export control on rare earth. And then, pandemonium. Scott Bessent panicked. He was yelling to the press how it was unfair that China was using rare earth as a weapon. But in the end, they had no choice. So for China's part, they're rolling back this export control on rare earth from October 9th, which means what export control China did place on rare earth before October 9th still stands. So, there's a lot of concern on whether U.S. military industrial complex is getting those rare earth. The simple answer is no. Because China has slapped on the rare earth export control last year. Those export control is still very much on. The U.S. is still going to have trouble sourcing rare earth for its F-35, Patriot missiles, and etc. And so, but what U.S. had to cave was when China put on a whole slew of export control on rare earth that will threaten all the manufacturing in United States, because now rare earth goes into everything. And Donald Trump tried to do some damage control by signing rare earth supply agreement with various countries like Australia, Thailand, Cambodia, Malaysia, Congo, etc. But those are just optics, because those supply agreements are mostly for mining. The problem is not in mining. The problem is not digging the rare earth out of the earth crust. Anybody can do that. The real Chinese chokehold is on the processing part, because they have spent last 40 years dominating processing, and Chinese top university like Tsinghua, Fudan, they graduate tens of thousands of PhDs every year, specialized in rare earth research and development. Whereas in the United States, that whole field does not exist, because the industry doesn't exist anymore. So U.S. cannot ramp up its own rare earth supply chain very easily. It will take decades. But knowing the attention span of U.S. administration, do you think they will be able to follow up a 10-year plan? China has their 5-year plan they announce every year, and you can trust Chinese government to follow through. But for U.S., the only thing they worry about is soundbite, next election cycle, next quarterly earning reports. I mean, they had known about this rare earth problem, China's dominance of rare earth, for at least 10 years now. You will find U.S. Congress complaining about this back in 2014. Well, guess what? Nothing was done. In the last 10 years, nothing was done. And I don't expect this time will turn out differently, because right now, what Donald Trump is trying to do, he's trying to copy China in implementing industrial policy. But the U.S. government itself is not set up to implement long-term industrial policy. U.S. government is very good at what it's set up to do, which is extract wealth from bottom up. And that it does very well, lining up the pockets of the military-industrial complex. But to actually do industrial policy that require multi-decade commitment, I'm sorry, I just don't see that happening. So the Chinese dominance on rare earths will remain for the foreseeable future. And China has now flexed their muscle to put Washington on notice. Hey, look, if you're going to break the truce in the ceasefire, then you're going to break the ceasefire on the trade war, then we have what it takes to slap back at you. You cannot push us around anymore. We are a peer, and you got better treat us as equals. Otherwise, you're gonna get pushed back from us, and you will not like it. And this is why Trump has done 180 degrees on China. Now he's calling China a partner. He's calling G2. But China is not falling for all that. China just like, look, all we want to do is just do business. Like, sir, this is a Wendy's. Just buy you a burger and get the fuck out. Like we're not interested in all that G2 business.
That's
but
funny.
But Trump being what he is, he's a reality TV show host. So he will going to spin this as a victory, and he's going to sell that to his followers. And guess what? So many of Trump's followers are gullible enough to swallow that. So this is why Trump can reverse his position every 24 hours in a tweet, because everybody, his core following, will believe him anyway.
They still, like, Fox News has been hilarious cope. I don't know if you've been following. I don't know if you had the stomach to. I'm a glutton for punishment. I like to analyze the propaganda. The Fox News, they are selling this as a great victory, a great success, a flex of American diplomacy. This is the tweet I referenced earlier. I showed this on the earlier stream, and it's just a small portion. Carl, I know you've seen all like these MAGA tweets before. This is like around, well, this tweet is April, the audacity. Like, a lot of these tweets came around February, maybe early March. The audacity to send this in April. Like, China has three options. Number one, concede defeat to whatever
equivalence.
Go ahead.
This is the equivalence of, remember before U.S. launched the operation against Yemen, the so-called
I remember.
Guardian, and all these accounts, big accounts, are posting the U.S. military propaganda and say, "Oh, now the Yemenis is about to find out why we don't have health care." Well, guess what? They still don't know why Americans don't have health care, and this is exactly the same vein of hopium and copium. Because this is one area where U.S. still excels in production versus China. It's the production of copium, and the zero hedge guy is like a particular, and he just nowadays he just exists to boost Trump. It doesn't matter about credibility anymore. It's just about to boost Trump to his audience. But there's a ready audience for that. I think, you were talking about Mandani earlier. Trump is basically selling the same hopium and copium but just to a different demographics, right? I mean, like, they're both promising change, because everybody knows the U.S. government, U.S. Governing elite is rotten to the core. So Americans from all political spectrum are demanding change, and so you have charlatans like Trump, promising change, or you have Obama from before promising change, and then nothing gets done. But that's how they get people. That's how they get people vote for them. And once they're in the office, forget it. The thing with Trump is, he because he's a reality TV show host, so everything is optics. He doesn't actually care about the effects, because for Trump, this might be Trump's last term. I'm pretty sure this is Trump's last term. So he doesn't really care what happened after. He only has 3 years left, man. He can do whatever he wants.
Yeah, he's getting old. And like, our system is pure anarchy. There's no real coherent central planning other than making massive profits for a ruling class, which is why they will never be able to compete with a country like China that has a unified vision. Like, right now, like, a big discussion in terms of domestic politics is the shutdown. There's the big government shutdown, which is, hey guys, spoiler alert, they're going to implement austerity. That's what this showdown bullshit is all about. And whenever they have to cut more benefits for the working class, the more absurd it always is. The longer they have to drag these kind of things out. Now, what are the Democrats claim they're fighting for? They say they're fighting for healthcare subsidies for Obamacare. Can you imagine a more incoherent and more ineffective way to distribute healthcare than the heritage plan that our capitalist government thought of, where they give taxpayer money and private subsidies to health insurance companies so they can maximize profits while keeping prices still unaffordable? So what Democrats are fighting for right now, do you guys understand? They're begging to keep the subsidies in place because without your taxpayer money driving the profits of health insurance companies, the prices would then skyrocket because the health insurance companies say, oh, we got to make profit. What kind of genius will organize a healthcare system like this? Does that seem like it make any sense to you? It doesn't. The only goal our system have is to create and maximize profit for their donor base. And I say that specifically because it's not like they're maximizing profit for everybody. There are small businesses that go under all the time under this incoherent system. They pick winners and losers in our systems all the time. Right now, Trump and his bros are picking the Bitcoin bros. They're the winners. AI is the winner. While the farmers struggle. The farmers need bailouts because the trade war with China. You guys see how it's completely incoherent. That's by design. I know probably not the best word to use, but that's the anarchy of the capitalist structure. I want to show this. So this was a good breakdown that you had. This is what the MAGA right is learning the hard way. The dominance of the United States rare earth minerals. And this was a game changer in a big way. I want to get your thoughts on this too.
Well,
go ahead.
I mean, this is, again, a self-inflicted problem because once upon a time, back in the 70s, U.S. actually was dominant in the rare earth industry. Then the Wall Street did their numbers. They realized, you know what? The rare earth extraction and refining is very polluting, and it's generating very, very low margins. We don't need that. Let China have it. And at that time in the 1970s and 80s, China was desperately poor. So he was, willing to accept all the literally dirty jobs of refining rare earth. But what happened was, after 40 years, all the expertise now is in China. Whereas in United States, the people that once know about rare earth, how to refine it, they have retired already. And they did not train a new generation of young people to take their place. So now there's a complete lack of human capital in that industry. Another reason China could do the rare earth export control, because it is a thin margin industry, even though it's so critical to the modern manufacturing. All in all, this is about $5 billion industry. For China, that's like a rounding off error in its trade figures. So China can afford to stop exporting. But auto manufacturing, aeronautics, every other industry do need rare earth and rare earth magnets, and they all have to come from China. And this is why China had the Trump administration by the balls. It took Trump administration 7 months to belatedly realize that fact. I mean, these guys are not that smart. And, the worst part is they believe their own propaganda about their own superiority, because every single one of them have been infected with American primacy virus. They really believe that, U.S. can easily call the shots. And this has been shown to be false. Multipolar world today is already here today. It's a reality, and now they have to, finally, they're moving from, the 5-step grieving process cycle. They're finally moving from denial, anger, and now moving small baby steps toward bargaining. That's where they are right now.
Have you been following the new Japanese prime minister? I want to get your thoughts on her, because I've done a few segments on her. She's like a Margaret Thatcherite. She says she looks up to Margaret Thatcher, and her platform, she ran on the platform of increased military spending and a hawkish position against China. And this is what I tweeted, because I think it was a funny contrast between what a sovereign country and what a vassal state looks like. G recently was at the APEC summit, and Takaichi is giving the impression publicly right now that she wants a more friendly relation with China, which kind of contradicts her original campaign rhetoric. And that's why I want to ask you about her, because she's right now in her early stages of leadership, so she have a smiling face. Do you have any thoughts or any prediction on how she's going to govern with the rise of China, where China is essentially at this summit? And if you've been following this summit, I want to get your thoughts on it. Where China essentially implored many of these Asian countries, don't fall for the United States rhetoric, man. We're not your enemies. We're trying to make you rich. Have you been following this at all, Carl? And if you have, I would love to get your thoughts.
Well, let's face it, Japan is an occupied country.
Yeah, absolutely.
And U.S. has a lot to say on who rise to the top in the Japanese political system. I mean, in the Japanese government, it's not about left wing, right wing. It's about who is more right wing, and because that's the kind of atmosphere that U.S. has been fostering in the post-war Japan, and all the rhetorics about we're gonna place Japan first, we're gonna muscle up our military. This is actually aligns perfectly with the U.S. agenda, because U.S. has realized that it alone can no longer constrain and contain China. That's why it's trying really hard to loop in Japan, Korea, and other so-called U.S. allies into this anti-China bandwagon. So by Japan pushing further to the right to further militarize, that falls into the whole U.S. plan of containing China. And the Japanese new prime minister, being a politician, she also knows to speak differently to different audience. So, that's why when she meets with Trump, you see her completely fawning over Trump, like this fangirl. And then when she meets with Xi Jinping, she, put on a friendly face. Again, this is just being politicians, career politicians who are essentially opportunists. Their goal is, again, to perpetuate the status quo and to line their own pockets, and then to sell to the public what the public wants to hear. And right now, Japan is facing some major economic headwind because they're facing a demographic problem, aging issue. They're competitive. They're losing their competitive edge to Korea, to China, and so what do they have left? They turn to militarization, like what Europe is doing right now. Europe is also, pledged to spend up to 5% of their GDP on defense, which is nuts. Well, this is at a time when Europe is actually deindustrializing because it got cut off on cheap Russian energy. So for countries like Japan and Europe, who are essential vassal states of the United States, they are now turning to militarization as a way to pump up, sustain their economy. But that ultimately is not sustainable. We know where that led to in the first half of the 20th century. But thankfully today, there's nukes. So I think that the prospect of a World War I and World War II scenario is greatly reduced. When both China and Russia have nukes, so they can't just simply resolve the contradiction in capitalism by going to war, because what they would do though is they would try to pick what they would think is the weakest link. So we'll try to go through proxy war, regime change, and this is why U.S. today is now they're trying to shift the focus back to the West Hemisphere onto countries like Venezuela, because you can't stop the military industrial complex, so the perpetual war must go on. So now they just okay, we can't defeat Russia, we can't defeat China, let's go after a softer target.
Very well said. I'm if you're on the RBN, sorry, I think I'm coming down with a cold. I think that's why I'm struggling today. I think I'm coming down with a cold. But if you're on the RBN side on YouTube, I'm gonna end the stream on there. We're streaming on Twitch, I'm on X, and I'm also on my personal YouTube page. So make sure you watch the rest of the stream there. Because I have one more question to ask you about in terms of what is happening.